All right, here I am with Adam Gall, who is the co-founder of More Than One Thing. Topaz.io is I think the one that you were presented to me as running, but you also do Decent Crypto.
Well, decent crypto is our domain name.
It's just Decent.
We're working on some rebranding.
You need to just buy decent.com.
That's expensive.
That's right.
We tried that. Yeah, didn't have enough for that.
That's fair. So is it like $5?
A little bit more than that. Yeah.
$10.
10 bitcoins. Yeah.
So if you want to go into, obviously that's kind of a vague introduction. Give us kind of your story. Obviously you run a crypto group in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
You're running a couple efforts that do some software development, namely with blockchain. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you kind of got there, what you did before, and really what your companies do now.
Yeah, awesome. So like you said, so Topaz is my latest venture. It started off as a product, and then we tried to spin a company out of it. And as of like a couple of weeks ago, we're realizing that we should sort of consolidate our branding efforts a little better and spin that back into our main thing, which is the main breadwinner so far, which has been Decent.
Okay.
Decent Technologies is a consulting firm that my business partner and I started 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's been our full-time thing for about a year and a half. And it is a software development firm. We've been working exclusively in the blockchain/crypto space, and Topaz kind of spun out of that as a more general solution, off-the-shelf product to a lot of the common problems that we saw working in the blockchain industry building software for the last couple of years.
So give me the full dive into what Topaz is then.
Sure. Before we get into that, let me give you some more of the story, some more of the background. The background's good. So, I'm born and bred here in Cleveland. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm still not sure yet.
Well, being bred is usually bad, but
grew up in Tremont. I went to Ignatius. I spent a year in New York City for school. It was way too much fun. I had to come back closer to home in order to get my bearings a little bit. Graduated from Ohio State, got a job at a big local insurance company.
Okay.
And I worked there as a software developer for 3 years, and then just kind of got sick of it.
Okay.
Learned a ton. I mean, definitely, it was not a bad experience at all. I learned a ton.
Yeah.
It was great.
Definitely progressive to your career, right?
Yes, it wasn't progressive, though.
Oh, was it? Oh, I guess it was.
It was the other big
insurance that's
company.
fair. It's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, I know. So that was great. I mean, made some good connections there. I worked on a small team, and we were building new products. So it was good. I didn't just get thrown into the grind. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I got kind of sick of that. And right around the time of me starting to get sick of that, a guy that I played softball with, who's working for a small design development shop called DXY in Ohio City. You probably have heard of them. And they were looking for another dev. So my softball buddy said, "Hey, Adam, are you looking for a new job? Like, the place I work needs developers." And I was like, "Sure. Okay. What do they do?" He was like, "Well, iOS work, Android work, web work." I said, "Okay." So I interviewed there. Must have done well enough for them to just give me a project. They said, "Hey, here's a small project. Needs to be done in a month.
Okay.
One of our existing guys could probably get it done in a weekend.
Okay.
But would you like to just work on it for a month? And if the deadline's coming up and you don't think you're going to do it, let us know."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay, sure, I'll take that on." So over the course of a month, I from scratch learned how to develop an iOS app. Mm-hmm. Delivered on it, and then said, "Hey, you got any more projects?" And they said, "Yeah, we do." And they gave me another one. And then about that time, I gave my resignation letter.
Okay.
At my day job. It just kept showing up.
So that was purely contract. That wasn't so you were just doing
that was just contract on on the side, kind of nights and weekends thing. And it was fun. I mean, I had a blast. Just sort of diving into the mobile world. I'd never done mobile development before. So it was really fun just learning new technology stacks. It was a real like progressive place to work.
Yeah.
To bring that joke back.
It was a good joke until it got shot down.
trying to bring it back in. So, it was the type of place where you were really given freedom.
Sure.
There's an office if you need it, but like get the work done and be professional is really the most important thing. You're not like be in a desk all day every day. Yeah. So, I kept showing up at DXY and they kept giving me projects, and then we formalized it into a full-time thing. Yeah. And I worked there for 5 years, building all kinds of stuff. Dozens of projects I worked on. Most of them just like from scratch. Given some spec sheet, working with the customer directly and figuring out what they really need. And it's where I learned how to sort of be a consultant and talk to business owners and people in charge of building products, and then sort of whittle those ideas down into something that could be roadmapped and budgeted and delivered on in a set amount of time.
I guess so. What kind of project, like what kind of companies were you working with there?
I worked on projects. Some of the big ones would be Parker Hannifin was probably the biggest project I worked on for the longest amount of time. They've got a department that's building like an exoskeleton called the Indigo. Okay. It's to help people with spinal cord injuries relearn how to walk. Okay. So it's literally a big exoskeleton. You can strap yourself into it and it'll walk for you. Okay. 100% of the weight, or it'll do 100% of the work, or you can whittle it down. And so I helped build and add features to, over the course of many years, a iOS app that connects to this thing over Bluetooth and manages it and does settings and all kinds of analytics on it. So it was just like it was the control for this exoskeleton.
Interesting.
That was a great project. I've worked on apps for Medical Mutual, Cleveland Clinic, American Greetings, a bunch of the bigger names here in Cleveland, and then just tons of smaller, from scratch apps that people would come
and just say, hey, make this.
Yep. Software developing, especially in the consulting world, like most of the stuff you build doesn't really see the light of day. Software projects are hard to complete. So, that's one of my goals as a professional, is to like try and minimize that, the amount of wasted programming I do. And to do that, you really need to take big ideas and chop them down into small deliverables and things that people can see and that you can change and iterate on quickly. Right. So I was at DXY for 5 years or so, and within that time of me being there, I took notice of the crypto markets. Back in like 2011, so as I was graduating school and getting my first job, I heard about Bitcoin online. I wish there was a happier ending to this story, but I bought some Bitcoin. It was a lot of Bitcoin for a little bit of money, and then sold them all a couple months later because I had rent to pay. Sure. And I needed the money back. And I didn't really get Bitcoin at that point in time at all. I didn't get it. It was internet money, and I didn't get anything.
I was in the same boat around that time, so yeah.
So that's too bad, but you live and you learn, So this was when Bitcoin was like $1 or $2. Yeah. And then in 2014, 2015, I saw, Bitcoin is hundreds of dollars now. Yeah. And I said, what is that all about? What did I miss out on here? So I was like, I'm a better software developer now than I was back then. I need to understand what's going on here, because it's just software running on people's computers at the end of the day. Like, I build software. I should be able to wrap my head around this. Sure. That took a lot longer than I had expected, wrapping my head around Bitcoin for sure. Probably over the course of a year or so, I just fell down this rabbit hole of trying to understand what Bitcoin was. It's a lot of different things. It's way more than just a technical system. It's it's a social consensus system and an economic incentive system, all implemented with technology. And I say those words and they mean something to me, but it's like if you had said those words to me even back when I first tried to learn about it, I'd be like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. So it's something that takes a while to sort of wrap your head around, for sure. So over the course of a year or so, I did that, and I fell in love with these concepts, and I fell in love with the ideas that it represented, and fast forward, I guess, to early 2017. I'm working at DXY. Kind of like getting a hold on what cryptocurrency is and what blockchain systems are about. And then this guy named Parker McCurley, he started at DXY as a software developer as well. I'm sure I was just talking about Bitcoin one day in the office, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know Bitcoin. Like that stuff is great." And I was like, I think so too. I'm like the only person I know who's like in love with this. And he was like, "Yeah, it's awesome. I used to, use Bitcoin back in the day. Like it's great." And we sort of bonded on that. And then, we realized that there's, it was just a couple people talking about it. There were no active, groups in Cleveland discussing Bitcoin. I looked on meetup.com, and there were some some meetups from back in...
There were some meetups in, the Lakewood area that started in, 2012, and it was for miners. And it was just a guy that was selling people desktops that had a bunch of graphics cards in them. And I bought some from him.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who was that? Do you remember his name?
His first name was Eric. His last name starts with a G.
Okay.
G-U. I don't know the rest of it, though.
But that may have been the guy I contacted on meetup.com. And I said, hey, you've got a meetup here. But there wasn't an event in years. I'm sure he's rich and way off the grid now.
He left Cleveland 2 years after that. So he probably was out... He was already out of that group in 2013. Did he ever get back to you on Meetup? Or?
Yeah, he said, do what you want, I don't care.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He didn't care.
Because he has enough money to not have to talk to people.
Exactly, yeah. So, I was interested in just, talking to more people about it. I had my group chat, and, I had been shilling them on, crypto, and I had my small group of friends I talked to, but, I wanted to get a bigger community going. So, Parker encouraged me. He was big in the meetup scene.
Yeah.
Lots of tech meetups. I'd never been to a meetup in my life. I was very much not a outgoing social person. But he encouraged me to start this meetup group. He was like, start a new one. And so I said, okay. So I registered Crypto Cleveland as a meetup group. In March, I think March 31st or end of March 2017 was when we held our first event. And there were 20 people that showed up. It was pretty good for a first event meetup. And it was great. It's just been rolling since. So this meetup group, Crypto Cleveland, now has over 1,000 members. It's been about 2 years. I've held social events, educational social events every month. I might have skipped a month here or there, but pretty much every single month, one evening at the end of the month, we get together and talk about the ecosystem and how to safely transact within it. We do a lot of demos of projects that are being built. It's a huge ecosystem, and there's tons of stuff to talk about. So I try and keep it very pragmatic. We're not just standing around talking about all the things that could be done with blockchain. We're trying to talk about and demo things that actually are being done with blockchain and sort of figure out what the next actual thing could be, and then sort of walk down that thought path and say, okay, what needs to happen to get there?
Right.
And let's try and focus on who's who can best do that. So yeah, every Tuesday morning we have a real casual meetup. You've been to a couple. At a coffee shop in Ohio City, which is just a few people usually show up. Just much more casual, general.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix of software developers, crypto traders, and people just interested in blockchain.
Definitely. I consider it a little bit as my street office hours a little bit.
Okay,
it's when it's hard. My time is very limited these days. I'm trying to run a company or two, however you want to call it. I've got a family. I got young kids. So Tuesday mornings, if you want to talk to me, you can find me at this coffee shop and talk to me about whatever.
Sure.
So that's been fun. A month after I started Crypto Cleveland, so April of 2017, Parker and I decided to incorporate an LLC called Decent.
Okay. So Decent LLC?
Decent Technologies LLC.
The plot thickens.
And we registered the domain name decentcrypto.com, which has not been great. Lots of people think our company is called Decent Crypto.
Yeah, myself included up until a couple minutes ago.
It's been a branding nightmare. So anyway, we started that with the idea that, if we ever took a job in the crypto scene, we should have a company to get paid under.
Right.
DXY was the type of place that certainly encouraged your moonlighting. They encourage that you're working on projects on the side.
Okay. That's an interesting philosophy for a company to have. Especially if that's you're doing projects that in theory they could do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's really progressive.
It was a great place to work, and it really taught me a lot about giving people responsibility and owning what you do and being a professional about it. I guess the idea was that if you're happy doing your own projects, that'll make you happier people produce better work. You don't want to be bummed out because you can't be doing your own stuff that makes you happy, so you're bummed out at work. They just make money on the side, sure, whatever. Get your work done that we're paying you to do. Mm-hmm. As long as you're doing that, it's fine. So we started Decent. Spent most of 2017 just kicking around ideas of what to do with this thing. We didn't take it super seriously. Well, I didn't, at least. We didn't do any projects throughout the middle of 2017, and then one door closes and another door opens. DXY very quickly fell apart at the end of 2017.
Yeah.
So it was over the course of a month. There were some red flags throughout the year, but over the course of a month, couple of weeks, I went from having a job and a paycheck every month to not.
Yeah.
The whole company fell apart.
It's a fun place to be.
Yeah. So that was stressful. I was also I had just had my second kid, and I was just
That's a good time.
My God, what is happening? What am I going to do? I was freaking out, I got to go, get a job, interview. So, Votum was just starting to scale at that point, a local blockchain company, RIP. They're also not around anymore.
I knew Leo. So he's the guy. He's the contact I had there.
Yeah, Leo's great. Jeff is great. But I think they were the first two employees of Votum, other than Pete Martin.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were recruiting me and trying to say, hey, come work at Votum. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do that. Yeah. And Parker was like, wait, give me until the end of the year. See if we can become profitable. Just give me till the end of the year. And I said, okay, I've got money in savings. I'm a software developer. I save some money. I can survive till the end of the year. Sure, Parker, we can do this. Okay, go sell. And so, it worked. We put on a full day seminar one Saturday in September of 2017. It was a Bitcoin, crypto, educational, plus hands-on seminar all day long. Sold tickets to it, $100 a pop. I think we got 30 people in a room. Just taught people about Bitcoin and sort of how it works, and then we demoed how it works and sent crypto to people and sent it around and taught people all about what's going on. Took that money, flew to Austin, Texas for the Texas Bitcoin Conference in October. I think that was over Halloween of 2017. And basically walked around this conference saying, we're blockchain developers. And that worked. We found our first client there. Over the course of a couple months, we built them a system on Ethereum. A piece of it was on Ethereum. Like most of the projects, only one piece of it has some decentralized portion, and the rest of it is general web technologies. So we built this system. They're in the advertising world. They were trying to sort of incentivize the concept of ads and ad revenue and how ads are shown on the internet. They had a token, and
what did the token do?
So the token was the thing that got sent around to people as ads were created and then viewed.
Okay,
and then distributed.
So the ledger basically has their habits towards advertising?
Kind of. So the way it worked was if you are a brand and you have some ad that you want to get in front of people, you could go to this platform and upload your ad and then put up a bunch of these tokens. So you would need to buy these tokens ahead of time. And so you would put up a bunch of these tokens into a contract, sort of like as escrow, and then assign some number of tokens that would get sent to a viewer and a distributor every time this ad was viewed.
Okay.
So now there's a marketplace. We built a marketplace for them, just a website that had all the different ads and how many tokens were escrowed into each one, and what the exchange rate of like per view, how many tokens get sent out per view. And then if you are an influencer, so if you've got an Instagram account with a lot of views, you can choose to help distribute an ad. And then, so if you do that, you go on and you say, I'll help distribute this ad. You'll get a custom URL for you that links your account with this ad. And then if you can get people to click on this URL and view this ad, then every time that happens, tokens get sent around.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. So, we built that. We built the token contract had existed already, but we built the smart contract portion that, did the transfer of tokens. We built the marketplace, the Web3 React website with the server component to help do like URL generation and token transfers. So we helped build that. That was the first project we did. I've also done, I think that around that time I did a token sale contract for a ride sharing company or a ride sharing service in Austin called Arcade City.
Okay.
It's like Uber was banned in Austin for a while.
I did not know that.
Maybe it still is. I don't know. Austin was not friendly with ride sharing companies for a while.
Okay.
And so this guy basically had a Facebook group in which he was facilitating ride sharing.
Okay,
And he held a token sale and raised a bunch of money, and then was trying to turn that into like an app, just a more user friendly thing. So we helped with that token sale project. They raised a good amount of money, built an app. It works. It's called Arcade City.
Okay.
We met them at the Texas Bitcoin conference.
Okay, so that conference was pretty
influential
good,
for us. Yeah, it helped a lot. And then over the course of end of 2017 and then throughout 2018 and now into 2019, we've been funding ourselves 100%, doing decent work.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. I've worked on a bunch of different projects. Like we could.
Yeah, before we definitely prattle some of those off.
Yeah.
I think that they'll kind of come in anecdotally, but so it's fair to say that most, if not all, of what you're doing from a development standpoint is centered around crypto, right? That's the niche that you play in. Obviously, it's kind of a smaller niche in terms of the broader what you can develop software wise.
Oh yeah,
and it's also a buzzword. So. Obviously, when I went to write the book Fortify Your Data, I'm like, what are the 3 buzzwords I could put on the top? AI, IoT, blockchain.
You got it, man.
Not in that order, but that's okay. So, in the blockchain, so as somebody that mined Bitcoin early on, I also had a very hard time understanding what it actually was. I basically just followed a template on how to mine it. I already had like the rig going. I had a very unsecured wallet when I was doing it because I didn't know any better. Also, there just wasn't the knowledge that there is now, at least not to me. But I'm not particularly smart. But when they had grown all of those things, how Bitcoin kind of grew, blockchain became more and more of a word. And when I mined Bitcoin, blockchain was not a word, and I did not know what that meant. I had heard it, but it wasn't something thrown around for like business application, right? Oh, just running a blockchain. Like it's not like blockchain is not C#. You can't use it as if it's not interchangeable in that way.
Right.
So I guess how do you best differentiate what blockchain is versus what Bitcoin is?
That's a great question. So blockchains very, very rarely make sense to use in most anything.
Bitcoin being the most usable use case?
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess I will preface this whole monologue I'm about to go on with, like, this is my opinion right now. Opinions change for sure, but, after studying these systems for years and then helping build these systems for years, this is just where I'm at right now.
Sure.
I think that blockchain is such a buzzword. The Bitcoin blockchain, which was the first, realization of this concept of a blockchain, it was created very specifically to enable Bitcoin to work. It wasn't created blockchains are not created equal.
Sure.
Bitcoin's blockchain is for Bitcoin. You can't just take that blockchain and slap a new project on top of it. That's not really what we're talking about. Bitcoin's blockchain is a big network. It has value because lots of people around the world are using the same blockchain to interact with Bitcoin. So, there's this concept of, blockchain for business and other blockchains. I don't see as much value being added to the blockchain ecosystem when there's many different blockchains. I guess the easiest way to describe that at a high level would be that Bitcoin has value and is secure, immutable, no central authority. The reason that all of those value adds are there is because that one blockchain is very widely distributed, very widely understood, and very widely replicated. There is value in the network effect. It is the network effect of Bitcoin's blockchain that gives it the value that it has.
Right.
Back when Bitcoin was, dollars and less, it was because the community was tiny. There were, dozens to hundreds of people using Bitcoin and mining it. And, as that network has been growing, as more people have been learning about it and understanding it and deciding that they want to partake in what this system is and own some Bitcoin and maybe use some Bitcoin, as that happens, the network grows. And more people pile onto this big thing, and it's that network effect that has value. So because more people are using this thing that is a scarce asset, which is another one of those qualities that only exists because people are joining the network in greater force,
Right.
Bitcoin has a hard cap because everybody says so. And the more people that join in and agree with those rules, the harder it is to change those rules. So, blockchains have value because of their network effect, I guess is what I'm getting at. The concept of, private blockchains or permissioned blockchains or, blockchains in which we're limiting the set of actors that can participate in them, I see that as not really understanding where the value of a blockchain actually lies.
Sure. So, and when you're looking at companies that kind of are just trying to throw an application together running on blockchain that might not be a good use case, you're saying that's almost a symptom of not understanding where the real value of that blockchain is?
Yes, specifically when it comes to not using large public blockchain networks.
Okay.
So all of the work that I do at Decent is on top of Ethereum or on top of Bitcoin. Those are the platforms I'm interested in. I don't work with private blockchain solutions. I don't do work on Hyperledger.
Okay. So you're not doing anything with Hyperledger, or did you don't do anything like Holochain or anything that pops in and out of the news feeds?
No, not really.
Okay.
And like I said, this is my opinion right now, but I see the most innovation and development happening on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so because of my, where I think the value lies is that, network effect matters the most in these systems.
All right. So with that having been said, where do you see the largest value in blockchain?
So I find the largest value in blockchain specifically in the large public networks. Building a new blockchain is going to be tough at this point because of the amount of development resources and developers that are already working on existing public blockchain networks.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Larry, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
Thanks, Larry.
one day after.
So yeah, there's certainly lots of other public networks that pop into the news cycles, and you'll hear about them for a while. Some of them might gain traction and be legit. I just don't have the time to worry too much about those things. If they end up capturing a significant portion of the market, then maybe I'll give them some more attention.
Sure.
But until now, Bitcoin and specifically Ethereum have been the two largest networks that, are. So Bitcoin just has the largest market share, and Ethereum is far and away the blockchain that is easiest for developers to build stuff on, while also being a public distributed proof of work blockchain.
Right. Well, and that's kind of where smart contracts really shine.
Yeah,
right.
It's where they shine. Yeah. You can build. There's a scripting language for Bitcoin. You can do some things in it. You can build smart contracts on Bitcoin. They're not as fully featured as Ethereum, and they're a lot harder to develop just from a programming point of view. It's harder to write that type of code.
And so, what are, if you know of any off the top of your head, use cases for blockchain that aren't implemented now that should be? And then the follow-up would be, what are some that are implemented and shouldn't be?
Interesting. So, blockchains, public blockchains, they work because they have an incentive model built into them. The reason that Bitcoin and Ethereum are permissionless, the reason that they can be public and still work, is because there's an inherent incentive to miners to keep building the valid chain. And by building that chain, they're adding onto the security of that chain over time and ensuring that the system will keep operating as intended. So that incentive is always native to the blockchain itself. Blockchains are very closed systems. They don't reach out to the outside world. They don't know what's happening outside of themselves at all. The only way to get data into a blockchain is to send it in through a transaction. And if the data being sent into that transaction doesn't fit the rules that blockchain has, then it won't be valid and it won't be accepted. For example, in Bitcoin, if I don't own one Bitcoin, I cannot create a transaction that attempts to spend one Bitcoin. I have to actually have it myself in order to send. I can't create money out of thin air that I don't have. It must be created through proof of work, through blocks. So with that being said, I don't think that it makes any sense to have a blockchain that doesn't have some incentive model underneath it. And so far, money is the great incentive that works there. There's an inherent... No, I don't know where I'm going with this. Cut that. So like the base layer of a public blockchain needs to have money in order for it to incentivize anybody around the world to participate and help build it and secure it.
So off of that, let's say, so one use case that I hear all the time is like in real estate. Let's tokenize the process of signing your name 500 times to get a mortgage so that you can just verify that you are you using blockchain. Do you like that or do you not like that?
So I mean, there's parts of that I like. You know, blockchains are built on cryptographic, concepts that have existed for a long time. Signatures being one of them. So digital signatures being one of those things. So, the whole reason that these public blockchains work is because every time you do an interaction and it changes the state of that network, you need to sign and submit a signature that, you are the person who is allowed to do this thing. In Bitcoin, that might be send some Bitcoin from A to B. In Ethereum, that might be create a smart contract and pay these fees in order to do so. Or call a function on one of those smart contracts. You have to sign everything you do. So when it comes to real estate transactions or other use cases that involve people like identifying themselves and creating some signature that says they did a thing or want the thing to happen, then blockchains are really great to do that with a couple caveats. One, you need some way to tie your actual real world identity with that blockchain identity that you've created. There's not an inherent link there at all.
Right.
All of these, signatures, they come from identities that are public-private key pairs, and these can be generated on anybody's computer in a fraction of a second. So you can create as many identities as you want. So there needs to be some way to tie your government identity to some identity that you're saying is you on a blockchain.
Do you? Sorry to cut you off. Do you think that that has to be federally regulated then? Like that's the only way that's going to work?
It needs to be regulated by whoever cares about the thing that you're doing in the real world. Like if you're trying to buy and sell real estate, like right here, Cuyahoga County, I mean, I don't even know how this works. Like the Cuyahoga County auditor is the one that is like saying things are valid or not valid.
Right, and there's title agencies that have to communicate with them, and I guess this basically cuts all of those middlemen out, which I think is what's attractive with it.
Well, I think it doesn't cut any of that stuff out. Like, if you and I, like if I pay you some Bitcoin, or I write a smart contract, and then you do a thing on that smart contract, and then like we say that a property just got transferred, like if the county doesn't know about that, then it's not valid. Then either one of us could go to the county.
The institutions still exist. I guess where I was going more is you don't have to interface with them in the same way. And that you don't have to go to the place to sign, the stack of papers here, and then you go to your mortgage or your mortgage broker, and then sign those there.
I mean,
the institutions still exist. Yeah.
The only way that this works is if those institutions recognize the thing that we did on the blockchain. As soon as they start recognizing that, like, this peer-to-peer thing that we did over here is valid, if they say it's valid, then it's valid. If they don't say it's valid, and I try and sell you my house, and I give you my house and you take a bunch of money and then you move in and they didn't know about it, then I could just go over there and be like, this guy's squatting in my house. And then start a whole legal process, and because there was no paperwork involved, you'll get kicked out.
Sure.
So until the real world, the people who write the laws and enforce the regulations, until they start recognizing that these things happening on a blockchain are valid, then they're not. It might be some digital stuff that happened, and sure, one of us might have created some identity, some blockchain identity, and signed some token that says something, but it's all just recognized. It's all just funny data until the real world accepts it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So all the projects that that you're working on are kind of using tokens that are basically for private use, like within a certain application for a certain thing.
Yeah. So this is kind of where Topaz came from. So it took me a long time to figure out sort of like where the value actually lies in all the work that I'm doing and what's important and what's not. You know, I mean, I've certainly worked on projects that like, you know, that was dumb. You know, it was a dumb project. Like we built a thing for somebody, but like, will it actually take off in the real world? Was there actually value in this thing? And I don't know, maybe not. And I've built a lot of other projects that like I am proud about and that, you know, that will hopefully gain some traction because I think that there is value being introduced there. A lot of those projects that I am proud about come into the realm of data attestation. So sort of using a blockchain, a public blockchain, for its data properties specifically, not so much for, you know, tracking something as it is right now, but tracking something as it was back then.
Okay.
So, you know, considering that Bitcoin's blockchain and Ethereum's blockchain are created in real time, and, you know, everybody around the world who's participating in the system, they all agree that, you know, the current state of this network looks just like this. And the way that we can all get to the current state of this network is by going back to the very beginning, the very first block, and just running through the whole thing. And every block basically introduces these state changes to the network. Very first Bitcoin block just had one transaction in it, and it was just like 50 new Bitcoin are created, and it belongs to this address. And then the next block said, okay, 50 new Bitcoin are created, and it belongs to this address. And then eventually, transactions started happening in blocks, and, you know, maybe 10 Bitcoin that used to belong to this address, now we're going to send over to this address. And so it just sort of updates the state. It's like a giant ledger, and every 10 minutes a new block is created, and the current state of the system is updated. What's cool about Bitcoin is that anybody in the world at any moment in time can sort of come to agreement on what that current state looks like.
Sure, yeah, because everyone has to agree before
everybody has to agree before it moves forward, right? Every block that gets mined does that. It changes the state of the system. And the way that anybody can join this network, not knowing anything about it before. So like at any point, any computer can come online and join the network and can verify the whole blockchain themselves. They can start at the very first block.
Right.
You know, they connect to a bunch of nodes, and those nodes start sending it data, and they don't even have to trust the data that's being sent to it. They look at what the first block hash should be. That's just hard-coded in the client, and they say, okay, does this first block match the hash that my client knows about? If so, cool, let me move on. Somebody give me block number 2. Does it have a pointer to the first block, and does it have a bunch of proof of work on it so that I know somebody put in work to generate this thing? And if it doesn't match, if somebody's trying to send you bad data, you'll ignore it and you'll ask somebody else, hey, give me block number 2. Oh my God, sorry.
Let it out.
Oh,
let it out.
Rough.
No, it's all good. Let it out. Don't let the demons come in.
There we go.
Get another cough drop if you need it. Still got that one. Never mind.
Okay. So, all right. Let me try this again. So, yeah. So, you know, as you're asking for blocks from your peers, from your neighbors, you can verify and check every single block in existence as it's coming in, and you can verify yourself against the rules that your client knows about whether or not that's a valid block or not. And so you don't even need to trust what anybody else is giving you. One of the cool things that we're trying to exploit at Topaz is the fact that each one of these blocks has a timestamp on it. So going all the way back to the Genesis block 10 years ago in Bitcoin, any data that has been a part of a transaction gets locked up in a block for all of eternity now, until Bitcoin dies. We're betting that doesn't happen anytime soon.
What do you think that will happen? And if it does, when would you hypothesize it happens?
I mean, I don't see Bitcoin falling apart anytime soon. I think that as the block reward keeps getting smaller, and because Bitcoin is not increasing the block size, then we certainly need to see transaction fees start going way up in order to subsidize the network, the miners, to keep building the blockchain and keeping it secure. So I mean, the economies of that thing are going to start shifting.
Yeah, but as a technology that exists, you don't think it's just going to fall apart technologically, I guess.
Oh,
there's a little bit of a digression, but
yeah, no, not at all.
Okay, good. There are people that think that. So,
I mean, how could it technologically fall apart?
Thank you.
I don't.
That's
really...
my point.
Okay.
So there are people that think that like if you hit the network too hard or if too many people jump onto or Bitcoin, that it will just get so slow that you won't be able to transact. And I'm like, not really. It's not.
I mean, it's gonna get.
That's all right.
If you're willing to pay the fees, then it's not going to get slow.
How would the fees look on that?
Well, so Bitcoin, the BTC chain.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin split a couple times. We could get into all that. But like what the market calls Bitcoin today has a block size fixed at 1 megabyte. That's part of the consensus rules. If a block is created that's bigger than that, it's not valid. So if the block fills up, then all of a sudden there's a fee market that gets created. So if you're trying to do a transaction and you want your transaction to get confirmed quickly, and that means you want it to get into a block and into the blockchain quickly, then you're competing against all the other transactions that are out there trying to get into a block. And miners are allowed to choose any transactions that they want that are pending to include in the block that they're creating. Okay.
So it goes directly to a miner to basically say, hey, that one's about to go off, give me that one.
Yeah, so there's this thing called the Mempool. And so like if I do a Bitcoin transaction, I broadcast it, within a second or two, pretty much every node on the network sees it, that transaction. But it's just sort of sitting in memory on everyone's computers. It's not in a block yet. It's not in the blockchain. And so miners are always trying to create the next block. And a block is just a list of transactions that are waiting to be confirmed. So every transaction has a user-defined fee that the user has added to it. So if I want to send 1 Bitcoin from me to you, I create a transaction, and I might actually be spending 1.001 Bitcoin. And the 1 goes to you, and then the 0.001 Bitcoin is gonna I sort of add as a transaction fee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I can add whatever fee I want. It's totally up to me on what fee I choose to include on that thing. And so all the miners out there that are making block templates and filling up their block template with pending transactions, they choose whatever transactions they want from the big pool to add into the block.
I assume that has to be automated though, right?
Yeah.
There has to be some, because
I mean, nobody's clicking these things. Yeah, I mean, you write software to automate this for you. Based on whatever heuristics you want. And so, when a block gets created, the miner receives the block reward, and that block reward consists of some freshly minted Bitcoin. Today, that's 12.5 new Bitcoin per block, and also a sum of all the transaction fees of all the transactions they chose to include in their block.
Yeah. Okay.
So, where I'm going with this is as the blocks get full, so as soon as you add enough transactions to a block where the data size of that block is a megabyte, and if there are still outstanding transactions that are waiting to be confirmed, now you've entered this fee market. So now, if you're trying to do a transaction, you're competing against all the other transactions to try and get yours confirmed faster than the others, if you care about speed of this transaction. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably what people talk about when they say it'll break down. I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think that a fee market will be introduced into this economic system. And, kind of the idea is that, as the Bitcoin block reward shrinks, because it gets smaller over time, until I think like year 2140 it finally drops all the way to 0. Every 4 years it gets cut in half. So eventually, and if we put a cap on the size that a block can be, and also this network is scaling and getting bigger and more widely used, then I think everybody's just kind of hoping that this thing will keep growing, and that in effect, as this thing keeps growing and more people want to use Bitcoin, then the transaction fees will have to go up in order to subsidize the miners for putting in all of the real world energy that they use in order to make blocks.
Right.
Because miners have to pay electricity bills.
Right, yeah. That's turning hard natural resources into electricity, into Bitcoin.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the great economic electricity equalizer of the world.
Circle of life.
So now, like on August 1st, 2017, the Bitcoin network split in two. There was a group of miners and users, a minority group, who said, we're not totally happy with the roadmap that's happening right now, which is keep the block size fixed and hope for a fee market in the future. They said, we want to just raise the block size. Like, let blocks be bigger than 1 megabyte. So, let us never hit a point in which the blocks are too small to confirm all of the current pending outstanding transactions. If you put a transaction in the mempool, it should get confirmed into the next block, no matter how small your fee is. So that's what Bitcoin Cash is. And so that's just that's a different approach to scaling. Kind of going back, so Bitcoin, the BTC chain, is trying to scale using second layer solutions like the Lightning Network. Right. So they say that Bitcoin will turn into like a settlement layer. So it shouldn't be small transactions in Bitcoin. It should be big transactions that you got to pay
a significant
amount of money for if you want that transaction to go through. Or maybe it's a single transaction that settles dozens or hundreds or thousands of smaller back and forth transactions that are happening off the chain. And every once in a while, you want to like settle that on the chain. So Lightning Network works kind of like that. Like, we could both put up 1 Bitcoin in reserve into a channel between us. And then over the course of a year, we might send some Bitcoin back and forth between each other a bunch in some transactions. And then, as long if I want to send you 0.1 Bitcoin, then, I have 0.9 and you have 1.1. And then later you might want to send me. So, and our balance just fluctuates. And at any point in time, we can sort of settle that on the chain.
Sure.
And if we just did that one transaction, so now you have 1.1 and I have 1.9, we could settle that with an on-chain transaction, and then 0.1 Bitcoin would get transferred from me to you.
Right.
So that's the Lightning Network, and that's how Bitcoin's trying to scale in order for like the masses to be able to use it, so that the blockchain itself isn't backed up with a bunch of low value transactions. It's more of like a big settlement layer, which is a big economic change in what Bitcoin was up until that point. Bitcoin didn't really work like that up until that point. It was always meant to be used as is, on chain. So that's kind of what Bitcoin Cash is trying to see forward, is this concept of, let's not let that block size be the limiting factor here. Let's try and have as many people use this thing as they want, and if there's 1 million people putting transactions into every block, and they all pay a fraction of a penny, that equals the same amount of mining rewards to a miner, if they only had a dozen transactions in there and they got paid a bunch of money per transaction. Just different scaling approaches.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We've kind of delved into what Bitcoin is versus blockchain, which is, I think, is a very special distinction that I wanted to hear somebody that's kind of living in that world give us. Tell me more about what Topaz really is.
Sure. So Topaz is really a service that tries to make it easier for companies, individuals, whoever, to tap into one of those not often thought about value adds of a blockchain, which is its ability to act as a global decentralized timestamp server. So, we've talked a little bit about how these blocks are created in Bitcoin every 10 minutes, in Ethereum it's like every 15 or 20 seconds. And they're all timestamped. And so if you or me or anybody can take some data that's valuable to us right now and stick a fingerprint of it into that blockchain somewhere, then all of a sudden you've just embedded your data into this big data structure that's very widely distributed, understood, that anybody can look at and say, hey, there's a piece of data in a transaction, it's in this block, and it's got this timestamp, so that data must have existed at that point in time. There's no way to forge that.
Okay.
And so Topaz is a way to do that at scale. So it's built on a lot of standard, internet technologies, web technologies. We've got an API. It's a RESTful API. You can go to our website and make a user account. Topaz.io. Go sign up, make a user account.
There'll be a link in all the RSS feeds and comments.
Nice.
YouTube. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll get you out there.
That's what's up. Yeah. You can sign up, get yourself, username and a password, right? We're not asking you to deal with private keys. We're not asking you to deal with cryptocurrencies. You just use this the same way you would use any other web technology. Like Stripe, for example. If you've built web apps before and you needed to accept money, you typically need to use some payment rail service for that. Like Stripe makes it super easy to just import a project and then a couple lines of code and you're accepting credit cards on your website. We're kind of hoping Topaz can be that same thing for developers. So if you need to, build some blockchain integration for some project you're working on, or if you just need a way to, attest that some data that you have exists at some point in time for an auditing purpose. If you're in some heavily regulated industry and you need to keep records of what's going on in your technical systems at points in time, Topaz is the perfect solution for that. Just today I finished up the documentation on our JavaScript SDK, and when I get out of here I'm going to go publish this thing on NPM. And then it's literally, if you have a JavaScript app, a Node.js app, you import Topaz and you call topaz.trust and you pass your data in. And now all of a sudden, that sends a fingerprint of your data to our proofing engine, and then behind the scenes we're backing that up on Ethereum, and I'll be integrating Bitcoin soon, and we'll be putting fingerprints of your data into various public blockchains that can't be tampered with. And then later, here's the cool part, is you can call verify. You can get proofs back. So either keep a fingerprint of that data, then we give it back to you after you call trust, or keep the data itself. And at any point in time in the future, you can say, hey Topaz, have you seen this data before? Have I sent this to you before? And if we've seen it, we'll say, yes we have. Here it is. Here's all the data you need in order to prove to yourself or anybody else that it existed at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because it exists in a public blockchain at this transaction. Here's the timestamp. Here's the proof that we created for you. Here's how you can reconstruct it yourself on your own end if you don't trust us. We're giving all of that to you, and you don't need to deal with cryptocurrencies. You don't need to deal with private keys or anything. We do all that. That's what I'm an expert at, is knowing how to manage all those things. So, we've got a whole system that I've been building up over the last couple of months that does all this stuff. And, I've got 2 JavaScript functions that you need in order to get value from these public blockchains.
And once you do that, you're up and running?
Yeah, yep. That's it. It's super simple.
It's beautiful.
It is. So that's what Topaz is. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun building it. It's a lot harder to build products for yourself than I thought. Just coming up with like specs, and especially product market fit. It's definitely hard. We thought that it would take us just like a couple of months to become profitable, but we've been building and trying to, figure out how to sell it and who to sell it to and what to describe it as for a long time. I'm not even that great at it. I'm not the salesman here.
Hey, it's okay. We like the technical people more.
Yeah, that's good.
But as far as like if somebody really wanted, obviously, Topaz.io, but do you have a product that people could buy today?
Well, I mean, Topaz is that product. Mm-hmm. It's definitely meant for developers.
Yeah.
So I mean, I see this as like a couple year long process.
Sure.
We're not funded. We're totally bootstrapped. We've just taken the money we've made consulting in order to figure out and build Topaz.
Right.
So we're not moving super fast and burning cash along the way. So as we keep doing consulting, it's definitely true that like every project we're doing these days has a Topaz integration at the end of it.
Sure.
So we're helping people build stuff for sure. We're definitely helping.
It's almost like a proof of concept for some of your work then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes the work we do go faster. Mm-hmm. And our biggest goal right now is to just get volume on this thing. Mm-hmm. So we want our API to get used as much as possible. So we're still taking client work mm-hmm. and helping people iterate through their ideas and then build those things. But like there's almost always a Topaz integration piece of it, just because we want to be pushing that forward.
Very cool. So you built it for yourself, but you're also trying to get other people to use it if it's a useful tool for them.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I anticipate that over the course of the next couple of years, we will find better ways to build stuff on top of Topaz that will turn more into an off-the-shelf product.
Sure.
So, one of the things that I can see as being sort of the first more user-friendly version of that. For a developer, what I've built is already super user-friendly. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to like integrate with blockchain and you don't really know what the hell that means or what mm-hmm. what you can do with that, Topaz is a great way to get started with that. But to the executive or to the project owner, it's not
intuitive. Yeah.
I mean, you got to write code for this to work. A little bit of code, but still code nonetheless.
Still code, yeah.
So
in Java specifically, or
the Topaz API is written in Golang.
Okay.
Just today I finished the JavaScript SDK.
Understood. Okay.
So I mean, I'm going to be producing client-side SDKs in lots of different languages over the next mm-hmm. couple months. Probably Ruby will be next, Java, mm-hmm. What server-side languages.
Yeah.
So one of the next one of the cool sort of more user-friendly things that you can build on top of Topaz that we're going to need to build something kind of like for one of our current clients is like a file vault mm-hmm. system. So just imagine Dropbox, mm-hmm. like the Dropbox web interface. You can drag and drop files. But imagine every time you add a new file to the system or make a change to a file, that thing is being backed up on Topaz.
Okay.
So you can track changes of a file over time, and you can track new files coming in and files being deleted, and whatever workflow is going on that you're doing, tracking that with Topaz. One of our current clients is it's like a real estate project, mm-hmm. and they do a lot of due diligence on real estate properties. There's a lot of paperwork involved there. So, taking rental agreements and taking, work orders, a new roof got put onto a building, and taking all of those documents, having somebody trusted who's like doing that due diligence, basically like stamp each one of those, like this file is accurate, here's some notes about it. This file is accurate, here's some notes about it. Now let me back this up on Topaz. And so now anybody else who's looking at it, if they trust the person who's doing the due diligence, then all of the investors can look at these sets of files and say, hey, at this date, so 2 weeks ago, the person running this deal put their signature on it and backed it up on Topaz, and I can know for a fact that this document I'm looking at has not changed in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Nobody uploaded a new version of it. So like now I don't need to put in the couple hours reading through all these documents myself. So it's just saving on administrative costs.
Yeah, No, I mean that's a super useful project, especially for people that are developing, but in between being a developer and possibly dipping their toes into like some real tokenized blockchains, or even getting into Ethereum. You said everything's on Ethereum, right? Yeah.
So the first blockchain integration we did was with Ethereum. Okay. And I hope that I can find some time soon to integrate it with Bitcoin. Really, I mean, it's really Topaz is like a middleware service. So, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, integrate with Stellar, and they're ready to pay for it, then absolutely I'll write a Stellar integration.
All of a sudden you'll find time.
Oh yeah, I'll find time. It's really just like trying to juggle a bunch of stuff, but yeah. We'll build integrations. Like it's built in a way where we can integrate with any blockchain. As long as we can just like interact with it, we can send a hash to it and then keep a reference to it.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously we're running out of time, but I do want to give you kind of one last chance to say if there's anything the internet can do for you. Obviously, you want them to check out Topaz, or just kind of what kind of value can you get? We do have a lot of people that like are on Minds and Steam, which are social media platforms for people that don't leave their house and only transact on social media that uses blockchain. But what can the internet do for you?
I mean, definitely use Topaz and leave me some feedback. Topaz.io, sign up for an account. We'll shoot you an email. You'll have links to our Slack account, and just try it out and let us know what's wrong with it or what you want to see or what wasn't intuitive. I've been in the weeds with this thing for so long that sometimes it's hard for me to take a step back and say like, this is good or this is bad or I'm not sure. So, if you're a developer and you're out there and you're kind of wondering like what a blockchain system integration might look like, give Topaz a shot and let me know. That'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. Well, appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will see you next time talking about some sort of emerging technology that I'm not sure what it is yet. Thanks.
Thank you.